What was that incident during Thanksgiving? I was about 6 years old that Thanksgiving, one of those crisp autumn days that felt full of excitement and family chaos. The house was packed with cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents. Kids were running around, the grown-ups were hovering near the kitchen, and the smell of turkey and pies filled every corner. We were all playing hide and seek, that timeless game where the world narrows down to just you, the hiding spots, and the countdown. I was determined to find the best possible spot, somewhere no one would ever think to look. While most of the kids were hiding behind curtains or under tables, I slipped away quietly to Grandma's room. There was this big closet, deep and dark, stuffed with old clothes and boxes from decades past. I climbed in, pushing past coats and bags, and found a narrow gap at the very back. It felt like my secret kingdom. That's when I noticed something I'd never seen before, a long robe hanging almost hidden behind some jackets. It was deep red, almost like the richest burgundy, with a shiny silk sheen that caught the little light filtering in. I pulled it out carefully, the fabric smooth and cool under my fingers. It was enormous on me, swallowing my small frame completely, but it felt nice to wear. I stood there for a moment, spinning slowly in the robe. The sleeves trailed past my hands, and the hem dragged on the floor. It was like a dress-up costume, but something about it felt different, almost important. I decided I had to ask Grandma if I could have it. Surely she'd say yes, and I could keep it to grow into someday. I padded down the hall, trailing the robe behind me, feeling like a princess or a wizard. When I reached the kitchen, all eyes turned toward me. The room fell silent. Everyone was frozen, like they'd just seen a ghost. My grandma's face went pale, and my Aunt Linda's mouth dropped open. One of the grown-ups finally broke the silence, a voice shaking with disbelief. "Where did you get that?" I didn't understand what was wrong. I held up the robe proudly and said, "I found it in Grandma's closet. Can I keep it?" That's when the room erupted, not with laughter or cheers, but with confusion, whispers, and outright anger. The truth spilled out fast after that. That robe wasn't just any old piece of clothing. It was my grandfather's ceremonial robe. My granddad had died when I was barely a baby, so I'd never known much about him. But the adults explained that he had been a Grand Dragon in the Carolina Ku Klux Klan. The robe I'd been playing dress-up with was a symbol of a hateful, violent organization. Some family members who had been unaware of this part of our history were shocked and visibly upset. Others, who already knew, looked embarrassed and avoided eye contact. The room grew tense, like a balloon about to pop. My grandma gently took the robe off me, folding it carefully as if it were something too heavy for even her to hold. The conversation quickly turned heated. Arguments about what should be done with the robe, whether it should be thrown away, burned, or hidden again. It was the most awkward Thanksgiving anyone could remember. The kids were shushed, the adults whispered in corners, and nobody quite knew how to act. The turkey sat untouched for longer than usual. The pies were barely touched, and laughter was replaced by heavy silence. For me, it was just a confusing day. I didn't understand what made the robe so bad, why grown-ups suddenly looked upset, or why my innocent game had caused such a scene. But I remember how the day ended with hugs that felt more like apologies, and quiet promises that some things were better left buried. That Thanksgiving wasn't like any other. It was a family reckoning, a moment where the past showed up uninvited and demanded to be seen. Years later, I still think about that robe and what it meant, not just the history of one man, but the complicated legacy families carry, and the way a child's simple curiosity can open old wounds. It remains the most awkward, uncomfortable Thanksgiving I ever experienced.